It's not just for individuals that God is watching us progress, but it's also as a community of faith. Individuals are not the only ones that wrestle with God. Entire communities wrestle with God. So Rachel and Leah and Jacob and all their children and all the people who had helped them and all the sheep and the goats and the donkeys began to move back to Canaan. There were so many it looked like a whole town moving all at once. Jacob was still very worried that Esau would kill him. Sometime Jacob was really sorry for what he had done. Sometimes. One night Jacob had asked all the others to go ahead a little ways. "I just want to be by myself tonight," he said. He never forgot that night. Jacob wasn't sure if it was a dream or not. But if it was a dream, it was a real nightmare. Jacob seemed to be fighting with someone, of something. When he tried moving, it felt as if someone was holding him. Sometimes Jacob felt as if he was fighting with himself. Sometimes it felt as if he was fighting with the wrong things he had done. Sometimes Jacob felt as if he was fighting with God. Jacob fought all night. Just before morning, he screamed in pain. Whoever or whatever he was fighting with touched the top of his leg and hurt him badly. Then it seemed as if the fighting was over, and Jacob could talk with whoever it was. "What is your name?" the strange person seemed to ask. "My name is Jacob." "Now your name will be changed. Your name won't be Jacob anymore. Your name will be Israel, which means you struggled with God. You struggled with all other people." And that is why the Hebrews began calling themselves the people of Israel. Just then the sun began to rise. Jacob wasn't sure as if it had been a dream or not. Then he realized it couldn't all have been a dream because his leg was very sore. It was hard for him to walk. Very soon after that, very soon, Jacob sent many sheep and goats and donkeys ahead to Esau, hoping Esau wouldn't be angry anymore. When Jacob saw Esau coming, he saw a smile on Esau's face. Esau threw his arms around his brother and gave him a big hug and a kiss, and then they both had a good cry. They knew they could be brothers again. Jacob knew that God had forgiven him. Why? Because Esau had forgiven him. This is the same brother that he had stolen the blessing from his father. Often at night, Jacob would lay awake thinking about all the things that had happened. Jacob would think about that night when he had a fight with the angel, or was it an angel? Jacob was never sure. But Jacob knew that part of the fighting had been with the part in himself that was running away from God. He had told many lies and he had cheated many people. Jacob knew that it was wrong. Jacob wondered how God's promise could still be with him when he didn't seem to be living in God's way. Then he thought about his new name, Israel. Somehow Jacob knew that the name was not just for him alone, but it was also for his entire family. It was for Leah and Rachel and all their children and for all the people who helped them. They would be called the people of Israel, the people who had struggled with God, the people who had struggled to know God's promise. Here's a struggle. A person once asked me, why do we have church? I mean, what really is the church's purpose? Well, that's a big question. Now, I think I know how I would answer, but it would be some long, intriguing, spider web of intrigue kind of story. But we're all going to have different ways of answering that, aren't we? Why do you think we have church? Mizpah, United Church of Christ. Why is this church important to you? Now, this question really put me to the test. I had to think, okay, now how would I talk about this? This was a bit of a struggle. I was wrestling. And then, as many times it happens, when I throw up a prayer, it's answered. It's not always in the way I want it to be answered, but it's answered. And it was through a Christian Century article from Soul Experiments. Stephanie Paulsell in Faith Matters said this about churches. We need places to pray as if someone were listening. We need some place to study as if we might learn something worth writing on our hearts. We need to join with others in service as if the world might be transformed. Churches are places to learn to practice with others a continual conversion of life, a permanent openness to being changed, to being transformed. We need to practice with others. It was never so true as it is today. Our culture has become so individualistic. You can see it with all of our devices, our cell phones. You know, you'll be at a family dinner or you'll be at a nice restaurant and there'll be people that are all looking down at those little devices. I do it with my laptop sometimes. I'll go to bed and I need to check on a few emails before I, kind of puts me to sleep, and my wife looks over at me. Oh, bringing your mental friend, are we? I think she's jealous. There's even a game out there in which you'll get several business people together. And this is how the context it was told to me. They get several business people together and you all sit down at a meal to have a conversation. And everybody puts their cell phone face down on the table. The first one to pick up the telephone pays for dinner. Yeah. Our culture strives to make enough money so that we can build a really big house and really big place to separate ourselves from others. It's even called get lost money. When you have a lot of money and you can build all these walls and don't have to be near those other people. We become Gollum, you see. Separating ourselves from all the messiness of life. We don't need to rely on anyone, do we? But then, of course, the problem is, while there are very few of us who may never seem to feel the need to seek other people, the vast majority of us get it. Eventually. We do need other people on our journey. We're all going to struggle at times in our life. We're all going to suffer at times in our life. We're all going to die. We're all going to need to deal with the meaning of life, some way, somehow. And if we don't feel the need to deal with the meaning of life, well, Socrates said it best. An unexamined life really isn't worth living. It's pretty boring, actually. One of the things that makes it so important to be in church is to really ask the real questions. The real questions. So you can start really chewing on life and learning your own philosophy, your own way of relating to God, your own way to relate to yourself in your life. In order for us to have a deepened relationship with God, we learn that we must begin where we live, with each other. We need to join in the struggle with one another and with God in order to be Israel, struggling with God. That's what Jesus was saying time and time again. Where are we going to get the most practice to go and do likewise in the world? Very few places other than church. Church, unlike school, we don't really get grades, although I have to say Moose, after every service, gives me a grade, so I always say that. There are really, most 99% of us do not have a job here. You're not here for the job. This is a volunteer organization. You choose to be here. Okay? And it's not like a family. Like a family, we have a lot of unwritten laws and rules of a church. We do have those things. But we are also pulled together by a common ethos, a moral imperative. What is Mizpah UCC's vision? It's in your bulletin. I'll let you look at it. At the top of the page. We of Mizpah, United Church of Christ, are committed to Jesus Christ's vision of loving God with all our heart, mind, body, and soul, and our neighbors as ourselves. Our job as members of this church is to practice that. Practice that. Will we be perfect in our practice? Of course not. No, but that's why we call it practice. Will we be, are we commanded by Christ to do that? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And another, yep. We are. We are commanded. This is the greatest commandment. It is our moral imperative given to us by God in Christ and as a church. The reason why we are here to practice that. Loving. And it ain't easy, is it? The only problem with people is people, right? How do we practice that? Cynthia Bourgeault has studied extensively something called the Law of Three, a metaphysical principle first articulated by G.A. Gurdjieff. She offers these insights in Transgression, a recent issue of the Rohr Institute's Journal on Women. Quote, this principle of the Law of Three, states that in any new arising, any new change, anything that comes into being at any level, from the quantum to the cosmic, at whatever scale and in whatever domain, physical, psychological, or spiritual, is the result of the intertwining of three independent strands. Affirming, for it, denying, again it, or reconciling. Now note that reconciling is not the synthesis. It's not like DNA, okay? It's not like mommy and daddy and everything gets mixed up and it's synthesized into one thing. No, it's mediating. It's more like the yin-yang symbol you see in Taoist philosophy, where you've got these two fish, that's what they call them, fish, and they're sitting there and they're always going at it. That's what it is. It's mediating, something that's always moving, so it's a ternary, not a binary system. Instead of paired opposites, this and that, it's this and that. Swimming together, working with one another in an environment, in a community. Three energies that in turn creates a whole new realm of possibility. Now, it is a great mistake to try to eliminate resistance. Rather, you have to work with it. People are against me all the time. I'm used to that. That's what I do. As I put out some thesis out there and people are going to, no, that doesn't work. Okay, then work with me here. This is one of the reasons why I'm so upset with Congress. They're not working. They're just saying, no, not going to do it, not going to do it. Acting more like children than children. It is going to be completely new and surprising, this new thing. The three forces working together dissolve gridlocks and move everything into a new playing field. That is transformation. How do we open ourselves to the third reconciling energy that allows a new fourth thing to arise? Cynthia Bourgeault again says that most humans in our normal state of consciousness are third force blind. We are stuck in dualistic ways of thinking, unable to see a mediating possibility. While we can't of ourselves, this is important, while we cannot with ourselves deal with paradox creatively, by practicing contemplation, prayerfully being with one another and with God, we can cultivate the awareness and spaciousness that allows new unexpected arisings, new change, new transformation. Yes, we can work the problem, but in the final analysis, it's not going to be us that solves it. It is going to be God. There is going to be some new aha. Oh, where did that come from? It's like the quote. The person asked me, why do we go to church? Why church? Good question. I was wrestling with it, and it didn't come from me, folks. It came from outside myself. You may not agree with what I came up with, but for me, I thought it was pretty good. Call to mind for yourself a seeming contradiction in your own life. Without analysis or critique, hold that paradox in God's presence and rest in the wisdom of God's grace. Gradually, you will begin to see with the eyes of Christ, who knows and welcomes all. I'm going to repeat the Christian Century quote with a few tweaks. Notice that the author, Stephanie Paulsell, uses the term as if. As if in her definition of why church. That is important. As if means that you are not sure. You are not sure, but you're going to act as if in church. You are struggling. You are struggling with God to mediate. You are still wrestling with God, but you are willing to make the effort all night long, like Jacob, like who you are, Israel. Mizpah, a place to pray as if someone were listening. Mizpah, a place to study as if we might learn something worth writing on our very hearts. Mizpah, a place to join with others in service as if the world might be transformed. Mizpah United Church of Christ is meant to be a place to learn to practice with others a continual conversion of life, a permanent openness to change, transformation. Amen?
Amen.
Blessings.